Hello, good evening. It's no longer racist, it seems, to talk about immigration. The Home Office that once accused Michael Howard of an unpleasant and pernicious campaign on the subject is now encouraging us to have a mature debate. Certainly the issue that once divided many down neat party lines is being blurred. But one thing is clear. The government grossly underestimated the number of new immigrants that have come into Britain from Eastern Europe. Next year, still more likely to arrive on our shores when Romania and Bulgaria join the EU. In a speech tomorrow, the Home Secretary John Reid will accept there's a limit to the numbers we can take. But is that too little too late? We'll debate the impact of Eastern European migration on our jobs and our communities in a moment. First, this report from Tim Hewell.
We were told they represented an opportunity for Britain, that we could only benefit when our labour market was thrown open to workers from Eastern Europe. 2 years on, our rulers are no longer quite so confident about mass migration. According to the Home Secretary, it's now the greatest challenge facing European governments. As Britain takes migrants from an ever wider range of countries, streets like this up and down Britain are changing at an unprecedented pace. Until now, the government's always argued that growing diversity could only be a good thing. But tomorrow, the Home Secretary will say that while migration can produce wealth, the speed and volume of movements can also bring insecurity into the heart of our communities. At the very beginning of this year, Newsnight reported from Crewe in Cheshire on how a small town, unused to outsiders, was beginning to worry about the impact of migration from Eastern Europe. Within 18 months of enlargement, Poles made up at least 6% of its population. Nationally, there weren't the few thousand East Europeans the government expected, but hundreds of thousands. Now, the strain on social services is being felt in many towns around the country. In Slough, the chief executive of the council is demanding her town be given substantial extra funding from the government, or else they'll have to raise council taxes.
Well, we've got a number of people who are now living in the town, which the government isn't funding us for, because their estimates of our population don't keep pace with the speed with which our population's rising. Some of the most extreme service pressures are around our housing, because when many new migrants arrive, they don't have anywhere to stay. And we know that more than 1,000 homes have been turned into new bed and breakfast establishments, and some of them have people sleeping in shifts, which is not very good for them, and it's not very good for all of their neighbours.
2 years ago, when Polish products began to compete with Oriental goods on the shelves of Slough's many Asian-owned grocery stores, Polish immigrants like these found their labour was needed and most British people were welcoming. Now Sylvia, who works as a volunteer social worker, finds attitudes are beginning to change.
I think this attitude is getting worse towards Polish community, towards Eastern European, because, for example, take one fact. When Polish people on the building site can do the same work for less money than English people, obviously English people are getting angry, are getting upset.
The story of how the government gradually became aware of the possible dangers of mass migration is told in a remarkable series of dispatches from the British Embassy in Warsaw, obtained by the BBC under the Freedom of Information Act. A few weeks after Poland's accession to the EU, the tone is blasé, almost self-congratulatory.
1 month after accession and the tumbleweeds are not yet blowing down the streets of Poland. Estimates on numbers have varied greatly, from 15,000 to 40,000, and the true figure is probably nearer the former.
Almost a year later, estimates are rising fast, but the embassy's still relaxed.
Polish statistics suggested that only some 100,000 Poles had left Poland to work abroad in the past year.
But soon afterwards come the first notes of alarm.
The Europe Ministry commissioned research on Polish attitudes to the EU. The issues that most concerned Poles were the risk of a brain drain. There is a school of thought that sees the UK as sucking away too many bright young Poles. President Kaczynski frets over Poland's poor demographic trends and fears the UK is luring away too many bright young Poles.
The impact of uncontrolled migration from Eastern Europe was spelt out in a confidential Home Office report last month that was leaked to a Sunday newspaper. It revealed that every government department had been ordered to draw up contingency plans ahead of a possible step change in the level of immigration next year. The government's worried East Europeans may gain access to council housing and other benefits they're currently denied. But it's even more alarmed about the possible new influx from two more countries, Romania and Bulgaria, expected to join the EU on January the 1st, 2007. Currently, this grocery in West London is one of the few Romanian shops in Britain. It's thought there are only 10 to 15,000 Romanians here. But since wage levels back home are only a third of the EU average, owner George Palar knows many people who'd be interested in coming over if they had the chance.
Yeah, they're fascinated about UK, that the people, they got all the conditions here, and the government take care about them, and they got work, they are paid properly.
Studies suggest Romanians are keener to work in Spain and Italy, where the language is similar to Romanian, than in coming to Britain. But studies have been wrong before. The government's not yet decided how wide it will open the doors for future EU members, and the Home Secretary's only talked very generally about how immigration will be regulated. Some think he must make a distinction between Europeans and others.
I think we should see the future flows of immigrants into this country falling into one of two streams. One will be those from the European Union, who will have every right to live and work in a country like the UK. But there'll be those people coming from outside the European Union, and that's the category of people that John Reid and others will probably seek to manage more closely in coming years, as they try to balance net arrivals from within the European Union against those people who are coming from other parts of the world.
But that'll be a difficult compromise to make, as the influx of East Europeans continues and distrust of government predictions grows. The Home Secretary's room to manoeuvre on immigration is getting gradually narrower.